Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Moms on a Mission podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Shaw. Thank you so much for joining me. You guys, this show today, it's gripping, but it's disturbing, but I still want you to listen to it because it's motivating and encouraging at the same time. We welcome to the show a dad by the name of Jeff Younger. This dad has been fighting for the protection of his child with his ex-wife for 11 years. His wife at the time when his son was just 2.5 years old, just basically announced to him, the dad, that she felt like he was transgender. And the story is really mind blowing, actually. And this was in Texas, what we think red Texas. And he has not seen his son for almost a year and a half now. And this started at 2.5, and his son is a teenager, a young teenager now. So listen to this story with an open mind. He is incredibly brilliant, and he shares things that I am certain you probably did not know that are legal, and some things that are illegal. So don't go anywhere. Watch this with an open heart, and share this episode. I think this is encouraging. Even if you don't battle this in your own home, we all know somebody probably who is battling this, and he's just brilliant and encouraging, and we can find ways to connect with him and support him as well. So don't go anywhere. You will really, really enjoy this show. Jeff Younger, welcome to the Moms on a Mission podcast. It's truly an honor to have you here today. Thanks for joining me.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So I got to speak with you. It was such an honor a week or so ago about your story. And I'm so grateful for that time because it is completely chaotic and there's so many moving parts and it's gone on for so long. I'm really excited for our audience to hear the story just for awareness and then also to support in whatever way they can. I would love for you, Jeff, to tell the audience, like you did to me on the phone that day, tell us what your life was like before this nightmare unleashed in your life. You have two boys, James and Jude, I believe. How old were they? And what was life like for you? I know you went to church and you said, I think you said your wife volunteered there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an Orthodox Christian. We went to St. John the Baptist Greek Orthodox Church in Euless, Texas. The My ex-wife and her two daughters converted to Orthodoxy. They were not Christians. They converted to Orthodoxy and became Christian when we married. And so I brought the whole family into the church. Pretty much I did most of the child rearing. My ex-wife kind of left her two girls alone with me. She worked like 80 hours a week in private practice at her own medical clinic. So I had to take her kids to school, pick them up, do all the homework with them and all that stuff. Eventually, I realized that one of the girls, her daughters, was a special needs child, had actually been exposed to methamphetamine in the womb. I didn't know that. So I had to take her out of school. I spent 3 months tutoring her and put her into a private school where she became a very solid high B student. She did very, very well for herself. Very proud of her. The daughters kind of eventually hit like that mid puberty, 13, 14. And I don't let any of my children, including my sons, dress immodestly. So, even when my boys go to see their grandmother, I expect them to be in coats at a minimum, probably ties when we go eat with their grandmother. And that's what I had to do as a boy. And it's a thing in my family about respect for older people. So there was some minor conflicts about that with the daughters. You can't wear jeans that look like they've been spray painted on. You can wear jeans, but just normal jeans. So I don't think that was it. There was just normal kind of stuff like that. And then just one day she started, when my son was about 2.5, she just started trying to transition him to a girl.
Okay, wait, I want to go back real quick. So when you got married, she brought her two daughters into the marriage, but the boys you have now, you've had with her. Is that correct?
That's right. With IVF, though. Her eggs were not viable. So we used IVF. So she's not genetically related to the boys, but she did carry them.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I was trying to figure that out. So when this bomb kind of went off in your life, how long had you been married and how
Mhm.
old were the boys?
We had been married over 5 years, and the boys were 2.5 years old.
They're twins.
They're twins, but not identical. Yeah.
Okay. So they were 2.5 years old when
Hmm.
this started going down.
Yeah. Yeah. The first thing I noticed was I caught her telling James she was putting him into a timeout, which is really weird because, like, honestly, I was lucky. I never even had to put my boys into timeouts. We can explain kind of my discipline approach and how that saved me actually during the divorce. And it's the only reason I got child custody was because of my parenting approach. But she was putting him into timeout saying, don't be a boy. The monsters only eat boys. You better not be a boy in here. And I was like, what's this all about? And she started telling me that she thought he might be a girl. And then she started ramping it up. Like, she was very insistent. I thought, oh, she's kidding. No, this went on for like a month. And then when I put my foot down about it, she filed for divorce, just behind my back, filed for divorce without talking to me about it, and forced me out of the
I'm going to
house.
ask you something really quick. So I'm just imagining if I were you or
Mm.
any regular American household, and two and a half, first of all,
Yes,
a 2.5 year old can
yes,
who can hardly even talk, can articulate that,
that's
mommy,
right.
I feel like I'm James, but I feel like a girl. Okay, I'm having a hard time with that, first and
Yeah.
foremost. But secondly, what can, in your wildest dreams, what do you think triggered this? Like, I mean, just one day you hear this, like, I feel like something was maybe happening below the iceberg. You know what I mean? Like, things are moving that you just didn't know about. Do you know what it was?
Well, there's kind of two answers to that. One is there's the official answer that she gave in court under sworn testimony, because in both depositions and in front of a jury, we asked her, why did you think, at what point did you think James was a girl? And she testified that she was in Target and James saw a silver purse that had a unicorn on it, and he said he wanted the purse. And then a few days later, he asked for a girl's toy at a McDonald's Happy Meal. And she thought, well, maybe he's a girl. And this is the true answer that she's given. And she's been consistent about it. She gave it in a deposition, and then she said it in front of a jury.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's the real answer, obviously. I don't think any rational person thinks that's the real answer. I actually, just to be honest with you, I don't think she believes my son is transgender. I think she intentionally miseducated my son to provoke a transgender crisis in the divorce in
Mm-hmm.
order to take sole control of the children. And she succeeded.
Well, you see that happen in communist countries. I mean, you see them, we saw it happen in America. I mean, you create a crisis,
Yes,
and then you weaponize the judicial system to take full control. I mean, we can
that's
see
right.
it happen with politicians. We saw it happen
Mm-hmm.
with COVID. I mean, it's a consistent communist and Marxist move for sure.
100%. Yeah.
So she divorces you because you're not accommodating or what have you.
Yeah, we go to through the divorce process, which took 3 years. During that period, I had 50-50 custody. So for 3 years, I had 50-50 custody. I lived right up the road, a mile up the road from my boys. I bought another house. And my son, just past his third birthday, starts insistently telling me that he's a girl. And he believes he's a girl. And so I took the first iPhone video that I had ever taken. If you go onto YouTube and just search for "Mommy says I'm a girl," you'll find it. It went mega viral.
What year was this?
That was me taking the video. Yeah, and it's James, me and James.
But I mean,
Yeah.
what year was this? 2000 and
This is 2000, like 2015.
okay.
Um, and James is, telling me that he's a girl, that his mom puts him in dresses, that he thinks he has a fake girl's name at this point, and he confirms over and over again that his mom says he's a girl. So I realized that she hadn't stopped doing this still. So keep in mind that we're going through a divorce. So they assign a psychologist to do what's called a custody evaluation in Texas. And this guy, Blake Mitchell, he practices out of Frisco, Texas, was the psychologist assigned to this. Blake Mitchell charged me about $60,000, does this 1 year study of my family. and concludes, and I'm not making this up, okay? He concludes that my ex-wife was not trying to transition my son to a girl, even after seeing that video, and said that I made a false accusation against her, and on that basis recommended that I get no custody with my children because I was a false accuser. The court didn't obey that dictum. The court gave me visitation, but I got less than standard visitation with my sons.
Based on that one man's report.
Correct. That's right. And we now know it was a total lie. How do you see a video where the kid says, Mommy says I'm a girl, and then we know what she's done since then? And we know that she was presenting him as a girl to the world. So at some point he must have asked James about that, and James would have told him. So he completely lied. His name is Blake Mitchell, and he practices out of Frisco, Texas. You'll find that I named the names of these people. So then we get, we get to trial. We have the trial. There's a whole bunch of chicanery. We had a prenuptial agreement, which was really designed to protect her medical practice. Of course, I didn't, I was very naive at the time about family court. I said, you cannot impugn my ex as a mother. You cannot impugn her as a woman. You cannot impugn her as a doctor. And you can't, say anything negative about her in the trial. So I was very naive. Let's just say that.
You're saying the family court told you this?
I told him that because I wanted to have a good relationship with her to co-parent with my children. I didn't want to create problems.
Yeah.
And I still thought we could head this off with just rational discussion, Well, instead, she ramps it up. Once she gets primary custody, she totally transitions him to a girl. On the days that I would take him to school in the morning, I would take him in boys' clothes. And the teacher would give him a dress and change him into a dress behind my back. And they had him using the girls' restroom. And they didn't tell me or the other parents about this. So it was completely, I didn't find out till about a year later. And it turns out that that's legal in all 50 states. And we can talk about that if you want. There are laws in the states which let schools do this. Actually, more than just schools, any licensed care provider can do this. So we wind up going back to court again in 2019. She tries to get sole custody because I'm cutting James's hair and she wants to let his hair grow long like a girl. So she wanted to enjoin me from cutting his hair. She wanted me to stop using male pronouns. She wanted to force me to use his fake girl's name. She did not want to present him as a boy to any third party. So she just goes through all these things that she wants to force me to do through the court. So we go to a trial in 2019, and I choose a jury trial this time because in Texas, we're the only state left that can do that in family court. And I win that trial. I get 50-50 custody, no child support. And most important, I get a check on all medical procedures. The reason for that was the medical records showed that my ex-wife and Dr. Jennifer Pape in Flower Mound, Texas, who's a pediatrician, Dr. Jennifer Pape planned to chemically castrate my son at age 8 or 9. That's actually in the medical records.
Wow.
So I got a check on the medical procedures, and that was a great thing. The liberal judges in Dallas County got very upset about this ruling because the way family court works, the rulings are all fixed behind the scenes, just like you've seen with Trump, right? It's all fixed behind the scenes. So they transferred me out of this court, the 255th District Court, into the 301st District Court in Dallas, Texas, under Judge Mary Brown, and I call her Bloody Mary Brown. Judge Bloody Mary Brown, instead of implementing the jury verdict, which gave me 50-50 custody, imposed a counseling regime on me that cost me about $80,000 a year, forced my children into separate counseling with another counselor called Susan Fletcher that cost me about $30,000 a year. So I'm spending over $100,000 a year just on counseling fees, and refuses to give me 50-50 custody.
Can I ask you a question real quick? You are like an attorney now. Just the words, the lingo, the language.
Oh, sorry.
No. I think it's great. I mean, I'm glad that you're smart and you're probably helping attorneys with your case because.
Oh yeah. I have more trial experience than most of my attorneys. Yeah.
Wow, that is just wrong. First of all,
it's wrong. Yeah, it's wrong.
I'm wondering. Sorry to go back to this, but I'm just wondering, how can Is this like an appellate court? Like, how can they
Mm-mm.
just, say, oh, we didn't like this ruling, so now we're going to do 2.0? I
So
don't know.
here's how they did it. So they created this counseling regime, and in this counseling regime, there's the counselors are supposed to cover these 9 things. It's stuff like recognizing the signs of bullying in your child, the importance of unconditionally loving your child, the typical stuff you'd get in like court family counseling, right?
Okay.
So we go 6 months. Remember, I've spent $40,000 at this point, and they haven't covered even one point. And it's pretty clear to me they're going to spend years and never cover any of the points. So I go back to court, ask the judge to give us a new counselor that will do the 9 points, and I tell the judge I've already actually gone to a counselor and done all the 9 points at my own expense with another counselor. What they do in family court is they don't allow evidence to come forward, so the judge only considers the evidence that she wants. So Bloody Mary Brown never let my counselor testify, and never allowed me to testify about my counseling that I had done. So then they said I wasn't following the counseling regime that they had set up. So you're going to start to see a pattern here where they create the conditions, they create an order that you can't follow, because I don't have $200,000 a year in counseling. So I can't follow that order. I need her to do the 9 points, right, in a few months. So they create the conditions where they create an order, and then they create the conditions where you can't follow the order. And then because you're not following the order, they take your kids from you. That's the basic pattern about how family court works. So then she also imposed a gag order on me. And the reason she did that was I was running for office in House District 63 in Texas. It's for the Texas House. And she's a Democrat judge. And she didn't want me to run for office because she was pretty sure I was going to beat my opponent on the issues that were at hand. So this gag order, and I got to tell you, I've had lawyers, a dozen lawyers at least. I've had some of the most high-powered federal attorneys look at this gag order, and they fall out of their chair. And the reason they're reading the gag order is they don't believe me when I tell them. So what I'm about to tell you is unbelievable, but it actually happens in family court a lot. She gave me a lifetime ban from doing any podcasts, a lifetime ban from writing any newspaper articles, a lifetime ban from writing any books, a lifetime ban from writing any newspaper op-eds. I'm telling you things that are actually mentioned in the order.
Wow.
A lifetime ban from doing any podcast interviews, radio interviews, television interviews, newspaper interviews. And it bans me from talking about 3 political topics, anything related to transgenderism, to gender dysphoria, or to gender expansiveness. And finally, it gives me a lifetime ban from telling anyone whether my son is a boy or a girl.
This is like the most massive violation of our First Amendment ever.
Yes. And one of the things to understand is Texas has better free speech protections than the federal Constitution. So in Texas, there's no legal reason to enjoin speech. There's prior restraints are not allowed in Texas, period. There's no reason you can ever do it, okay? All of them have been struck down in Texas. There's one, you can make an argument, there's one case for a temporary, and they've ruled that temporary is only for a 2-month period. For a temporary period, you might limit someone's speech to avoid tainting a jury pool. If you're trying to select a jury in a small town, you may not want to let people know what the case details are. So the courts have, but the courts are disagreed about that too. So like we have the best free speech protections in Texas. There's absolutely no reason. So I told her in court, I just said, look, I was brought in repeatedly for enforcement of this gag order because I didn't follow it. So my ex-wife brought me into court probably a dozen times trying to get me thrown in jail for it. And I just told the judge 3 times in court, one of the things is just fine about me. I'm just very plain speaking, I don't lie when I go into court. I'm just the same guy in court that I am right here. That's the guy I am in front of the judge. So I just told her, I said, Judge Mary Brown, I have maximum contempt for the text of the order. I have maximum contempt for the violations of my rights under the U.S. Constitution. I have maximum contempt for the court for violating my rights under the Texas Constitution. I have maximum contempt for you personally as a woman for issuing this order against your fellow citizen. So I'm in maximum contempt of court, and you're obligated to give me the maximum criminal contempt sanction, which is 18 months in the Louis-Sterret County Jail. And I just would hold up the writ of habeas corpus and say, I've already prepared a writ of habeas corpus. We'll go up to the Court of Criminal Appeals and we'll see if family courts can issue gag orders like this. Well, she did not want to create a precedent in Texas that these judges can't do this. And that's exactly what would have happened. So instead, she reasoned like this. This order is amazing when I read it. She said, I issued a gag order, which Mr. Younger says is unconstitutional. But I issued the, and she put in quotes, unconstitutional order in the interests of the children. Since Mr. Younger is not following the order, he's not acting in the interests of his children. And therefore, I'm giving Mr. Younger supervised visitation and he can't see his children anymore. So you see how, again, they created the conditions where they give you an order that you can't comply with. They create the conditions where you can't comply with it. And then they take your kids from you as a result of you not complying with it. So then they're like, well, here's the deal. You're going to go to this place called Forensic Counseling Services. I name names, in Dallas, Texas. Forensic Counseling Services is run by gay men. And these gay men are going to supervise my visitation with my son. So I called them up before I ever scheduled a visitation. I said, my ex-wife is going to bring my son in a dress. My son is very embarrassed to be in a dress in front of me because my son has never presented as a girl with me. He's only presented as a girl with his mom. So he's very embarrassed by that. And the guy at the Forensic Counseling Services said, the psychologist said, well, we can't let you change him out of his clothes. That might emphasize the conflict between you two, and we don't want to do that with the children. But I knew exactly what he was going to do. He was going to report that embarrassment as fear. And then they would get a domestic violence restraining order against me.
Wow.
The significance of a lot of people don't, especially women, do not understand the implications of a man getting a domestic violence restraining order. You lose your Second Amendment rights. Number one, you cannot carry a firearm in any state. Yeah. And in some states that's permanent. If you get a permanent restraining order, then your loss of your Second Amendment rights are permanent without a finding from any court. It's just a judge issuing the order. You lose state licensure in most states. So if you're an electrician, you can't work as an electrician anymore. You lose the ability to work on state contracts or work for state government. So there's like this whole host of things.
Yeah. It's like a ripple effect.
That's right. Well, during this time, she accused me of domestic violence. She said, well, she changed the story several times. First, it was that I brushed her shoulder. Then it was that I pushed her shoulder. Then she said I clubbed her with some kind of weapon. So we went, unlike a lot of men, I'm like, oh, no. We're not going to do this domestic violence restraining order thing. So I went down to the prosecutor's office and I intentionally pissed him off. And I pissed him off in front of his two bosses. And he's like, okay, Mr. Younger, I'm going to show you who's boss. And he charged me with a crime. He charged me with domestic violence, assault by contact, domestic violence. And I did that on purpose to get him to charge me. Okay? Because remember, most of the time, these kinds of domestic violence restraining orders, they're not being done in a criminal court. They're being done in a civil court where there's no due process. The judge just issues the order, right? Well, now that I'm in a criminal trial, guess what? I get due process. So I spend $72,000 on a criminal trial. The trial takes a full day. The jury comes back in less than 15 minutes and finds me not guilty. Well, now that I've been found not guilty, they cannot put a domestic violence restraining order on me.
Oh, in another situation.
That's right. That's right.
Oh,
so for the offense that she alleged, the civil court cannot act now. I basically took it, but it cost me $72,000 and an extremely stressful civil trial. I had to hire a private investigator. It turns out there was a nosy neighbor who really hated to see my son in a dress and watched me pick up my kids, twice a week. And so there was a witness she didn't know about.
Nice.
And that's what saved me. So you
So
can
let
see that she's pulling out all the stops.
Yes, and I want to transition because I know this is layered, like there are a
Oh
million
yeah.
layers, but I want to transition to the fact because I think this is so powerful is that this was going on. Well, two things. First of all, this was going on in quote unquote conservative red Texas, and I live
Yes.
in conservative quote unquote red Oklahoma. And
Yes.
we, our states vote for President-elect Trump, which is wonderful. Even in Oklahoma, all 77 counties went red 3 times for President-elect Trump. So,
Nice.
that's great. But it's just we're seeing, you and I were talking on the phone, we're talking about all the nefarious activity that happens more on a local level. And General Michael Flynn always talks about local action equals a national impact. But with all of this crazy, nefarious evil that's happening
Hmm.
locally for you, how on earth, you told me on the phone that day that your wife took your 2 precious boys and moved to California. What I want to know is how is that legal? Because even with all the shenanigans and all the things that they were doing with you in Texas, I mean, I don't understand how someone can just move across the country like that.
So what they said was, again, they create an order, then they create the conditions where you cannot comply, and then they take more of your rights from me. So this time they put me on supervised visitation. I told you the supervisor basically said I have to affirm James as a girl. I have to use his fake girl's name. Can't take him out of address, right? Won't let me pray with my son. So I can't go to these visitations because I'm
Wait,
never going to affirm.
why can't you pray with your son?
He was afraid that would exacerbate and emphasize the conflict between the parents. Same reason that he wouldn't take him out of address.
Okay. Hmm.
So I didn't go to these visitations. And I told the judge, if I have to affirm my son's a girl, I can't go to these. That's a moral line I cannot cross. And so the judge, when my ex-wife filed to move to California, she filed with the court to do that. The court said, well, you're not using your visitation time with your son. So since you're not visiting your son, we're going to let her move because you're not visiting them anyway. You see
Wow.
how it works?
Yes, you are exactly right.
Yeah, they create the conditions where they can. That's what the judge is doing when they're fact finding in the court. They're finding those pain points where you can't comply.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're going to take your rights from you on the basis of that noncompliance. So I go up to the Texas Supreme Court. It's supposed to be a conservative court. And California had just passed SB 107, which is the transgender kidnapping bill in California. And they had also allowed 12-year-olds to consent to these procedures, even if their parents don't want it. And it's also a guaranteed treatment in California. It cannot be denied by a doctor. And yet in Texas, I had spent 6 years getting it outlawed in Texas. I'm the one who actually wrote the bill for that. Okay. So I go up to the Supreme Court and I tell them, look, you can't let my son move to California because you'd be depriving him of the protections of Texas law that I just fought 6 years to pass to protect this boy. So she couldn't chemically castrate him here in Texas. And California will never return him. If she steps foot into California, they'll never return him to Texas, even on a court order. That's what their law says.
Oh my word. Wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. America First Legal and First Liberty have actually issued travel advisories to conservatives to not take your children within the boundaries of California or Minnesota, because they will not. If anybody in the state believes your child's transgender, they'll not let you bring your child back.
Wow.
Yeah. Don't go to California if you're conservative.
I've not heard that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
SB 107. Yeah. Look it up. It was passed by a guy named Anthony Weiner, who is a gay member of the Senate, who's openly prances nude through gay pride parades and all kinds of stuff. He's the one that came up with all this stuff. In the same session they did SB 107, they reduced the penalties for child rape for gay men. So if a gay man rapes a child, but the age difference was within 7 years, it's a misdemeanor. But if a heterosexual male rapes a girl who's a child, it's a felony. Wow. So gay rape is protected in California. And this is a whole set of bills that were passed during that session by Anthony Weiner. So all the justices on the Supreme Court except one, Justice Devine, voted to protect my son and keep him in Texas. Every other justice, Justice Young and Justice Blacklock especially, who wrote the opinion, voted to castrate my son and send him to California. So, and I can explain why the Republican establishment didn't protect me, but protected my ex-wife through this whole thing. So we get to California. I'm in a trial in LA County, which is the worst county I could possibly be in, worse than San Francisco, actually.
And was it there because that's where she moved?
She moved there intentionally because that's where LA Children's Hospital is, which is the largest gender clinic in the country. And the judiciary there is completely bought off by the hospitals. So the hospitals donate very heavily to the judges. So I get Judge Mark Uhas, who is I'm his last case, and before he retires, and they've already told him how to rule. It's pretty clear in the very beginning. So the very first thing I asked for is I want an independent medical exam of my son. He denies that. I asked for an independent psychological exam. He denies that. I asked for visitation time while the trial's happening. He denied that. He even ruled that the other side, my ex-wife, did not even have to provide me evidence in the trial. Normally, you have to exchange evidence in a process called discovery. They didn't give me any discovery. I got not one document from them, but I had to give them over 1,000 pages of documents. So I went into trial with no discovery. Yeah.
This sounds like China or North Korea.
Yeah. It's I will tell you, California is not a democracy. California is a single party state like North Korea. It's run as a dictatorship. It's run more like mainland China in that they pay people off. But for example, judges are supposed to be elected in California, but they don't elect judges in California. Because what happens is they resign the month before the election and then the governor appoints. There's a loophole in California law. Judges will resign the month before, and then the governor will reappoint the same person, and they don't have an election.
Wow.
So judges don't get elected in California. Okay. The only way that ever happens is if you successfully pull off a recall, which I am going to do to Judge Uhas, even though I was his last case. It's a point of honor that I'm going to have satisfied one way or another. Okay, so we go through a 7-day trial. Okay.
When did she take the boys? What year was that, and how old were they at that time when they went to California?
2021.
Okay.
Yeah. December 2021, when literally a month after California passed the transgender kidnapping bill, she moved there.
Okay. Yeah. How convenient. Okay.
Yeah. So we go to a 7-day trial. I have an excellent expert. Her name is Miriam Grossman, who's written an excellent book. You know her? Yes.
Yeah. Lost in Translation.
Yes. She's the best, by the way.
She has a great first name.
Yeah. And she'd be a good person for you to interview, actually.
Yeah.
She's a psychiatrist. And she completely destroyed their expert, who was just a moron. I mean, well, you kind of gotta give it to him. Like, there's no defense of transgender ideology. It's logically incoherent. It's scientifically incoherent. There's no way to really defend it. You know,
and it's called gender dysphoria. We know what that is. So.
Yeah, I destroyed them. Well, I'll give you an example of one funny moment in the trial where the judge had to intervene. The AJ Eckert was their expert, and it's a woman who thinks she's a man. So she starts talking about the problem of cisgender stereotypes and how I'm imposing cisgender stereotypes on my son and all this. And I said, can you, I was doing this pro se without a lawyer. I don't use lawyers very often anymore because they have more trial experience than the lawyers. So I just asked her, I said, well, can you tell me the DSM-5 diagnostic criteria for gender dysphoria? And so she reads it. She reads off the criteria A, which is basically saying if you engage in cisgender stereotypes of the opposite gender. Criteria B is that it creates significant distress. Mm-hmm. So I pin her down, and she finally admits that, yeah, criteria A is saying that if a boy engages in cisgender stereotypes, typical behavior of a girl, that would meet criteria A. And I said, but doctor, you just told me that cisgender stereotypes are invalid and should not be used in diagnostic criteria or at law. So then should we throw out this criteria A of the gender dysphoria definition? And the judge just looked at me. My ex-wife pounded her fist on the table and threw some papers. And the judge said, Mr. Younger, I think your questioning is becoming emotionally abusive to the witness.
Oh, this is such a Marxist move, man.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
feelings every single time.
But like, how stupid can you be? Like, she says you can't rely on cisgender stereotypes, but the very diagnostic criteria relies on cisgender stereotypes. These people are dumb. Like, it's just so dumb. Anyway.
But it is a smart move. It is a smart move. I say smart. I mean, it's their own move, but it is fairly effective to switch to emotion and feelings. I mean, Saul Alinsky talks about that in his rules for radical. I mean, one of the rules is to ridicule and to make your enemy mad and get them to overreact. And
oh yeah.
So it is definitely a Marxist move, and it's quite effective, sadly.
No doubt about it. When I'm in court, I use all three elements of rhetoric. I use emotional appeals, logical appeals, and appeals to ethics and character. So this displayed the character of my ex-wife to the judge very easily, very, very clearly, better than any testimony I could give. And in other words, their expert testimony was ridiculous. Absolutely. I'll give you another example. They bring in Bridget Kahn, who did the psych evaluation on my son, the one who said he had gender dysphoria, Bridget Kahn. She works at Children's Hospital as well. So I just point out to her, I said, now you say that James now has some distress and you expect him to have more distress. She goes, yeah. And then I just hand her the psychologists who had examined my son in Texas, the ones that testified against me. I said, Doc, have you read these reports? And she said, yes. And I said, you realize these are adverse reports against me, right? She goes, yes. And I said, look on this page. And I said, what does it say? And she says, it says that James has no distress. And both of them said he had no distress. I said, here's a quote from the trial. This is a transcript from the trial. I got that admitted. I said, what is that? I said, that's James's first grade teacher. What does she say? She says he's the happiest kid in class. I said, okay. So we have a situation in Texas where my son can express himself as a boy and he's the happiest kid in class. Now that he's in California, he can only express himself as a girl, and you're saying he has distress.
And they expect it to continue.
Do you find any logical correlations there? Did you investigate that in your diagnosis? And she didn't. And she just got all discombobulated. And the judge again said, no, Mr. Younger, you need to not argue with the witness. You need to calm down. I'm like, Judge, I'm using logic.
Well,
of
course,
so the judge didn't rely. Right. The judge actually wound up, because I so thoroughly destroyed with Miriam Grossman's testimony and my cross, we totally destroyed all the expert witnesses. So in his ruling, he had to do this. He threw out all expert testimony. He said, I'm not considering any medical testimony about this boy's healthcare. Well, he had to do that because they made complete idiots of themselves. So what he eventually rules is that my ex-wife has sole legal custody, which means she has the sole right to do any medical treatment she wants to him. She does not have to give my boys my letters and birthday gifts and Christmas gifts. She does not have to inform me of any medical procedures or anything about their education. And I still have supervised contact with my sons. He didn't take that off. The one thing he did take off was the unconstitutional gag order. And he just flat out told opposing counsel during the trial, he's like, if I put this in the ruling, the appeals court will overturn this decision, and I don't want them to do that. So he didn't put it in there. So I'm not under that gag order anymore.
So have you seen your boys? Like, when's the last time you've seen them? How old are they now?
They're 12 years old. The last time I saw them was about 1 year and 4 months ago. I did a supervised visitation, and it was a disaster. Yeah. What
do you mean?
The supervisor reported all these lies. What's unfortunate for her is Judge Juhas is a pretty strong advocate in the courts for fairness to fathers who have been convicted of felonies. And so he wrote an entire book on the unfairness of the supervised custody scam that they do. They basically want you to rent your kids from the state, is what they want you to do. So he just told opposing counsel, he said, I'm going to throw out all the testimony from this custody evaluator. She went way beyond her limits. He said, you can ask me to give Mr. Younger supervised visitation, but my order will say they can't use her.
Oh, wow.
She will never, no court in LA will ever recommend her for supervised visitation again. So, and that's exactly what he did. He said, you have supervised visitation, but not her.
So you said 1 year and 4 months ago, James is the one that your wife is targeting to make this point, this lie. And his brother, who was 12, the twin, Jude.
Yes.
What does Jude say to all this? What is his demeanor like?
So Jude is, and he has been struggling with this for a long time. He knows that in church he was taught not to lie.
Yeah.
And his basic quandary is, well, I know that I'm lying when I say my brother's a girl. So there must be a time when you're supposed to lie. When are you supposed to lie and when are you supposed to tell the truth? And he's very confused about it. And I think he still is to this day.
Yeah, of course he is. And so now you said they were 12 when you saw them?
Yes. Yeah.
So now they're 13.
Well, they'll be 13 in April.
In April. So they're almost 13. So you're probably freaking out that this chemical castration anyway has already begun or will be beginning soon.
I have no doubt that the week I got the ruling 3 weeks ago, they put the puberty blocking stick into him. Yeah. Yeah. It's a slow release stick that goes in the arm or the buttock. And if I can get that out of him before about 6 months, I can probably avoid permanent damage to him. Which is one of the reasons that I'm just doing all these interviews, is because Trump has put out a position video, which I think is very smart for him to do that. He did it on 5 issues, and this was one of them. So this must be one of his top 5 issues. He said that he would decertify hospitals, federally decertify hospitals that do these procedures. He would prohibit insurance companies from dispersing any federal subsidy money or any money at all to these procedures, which will cut off the funding to these clinics. And most importantly, he said that he would create a federal cause of action, which would let me sue in federal court without going through state court. So I can bypass the liberal California courts and go straight into federal court. So if Trump follows through on what he said, there's still a chance I can save James. So I'm trying to put as much pressure on Trump and mainly on his staff. Like, this has to be the priority. Like, there is a boy, and there's a lot of children actually, who are going to have their lives ruined if they don't act on this.
And if they don't act fast. Right. Close the border and defund these hospitals who are doing these, mutilation procedures permanently on these children who have been brainwashed and indoctrinated by radical left Marxists. Really,
that's right. And it's being allowed to happen by a lot of Republicans, like I told you. And the reason for that is somewhat disturbing. That may surprise you and your listeners, but the transgender movement in America, at least, was not started by Democrats. It was actually started by Republicans.
Wow.
There's one donor class in the United States. There's just one donor class, and they donate to both parties. And the donor class controls both parties through these donations. Paul Singer is the largest donor to the Republican Party. He's a huge LGBT advocate. He created the Human Rights Campaign, which, the yellow equal sign you've probably seen. That was founded by a Republican, Paul Singer. And it's the most powerful transgender lobby group in the world. Paul Singer is also the largest donor to Texas campaigns, out-of-state donations to Texas campaigns. So if you want to know why those justices voted against me, you want to know why the governor never touched this, the only persons that got involved in the executive branch in Texas was Ken Paxton, the attorney general, the most successful attorney general in United States history. He's won more cases against the federal government for states' rights than any attorney general in U.S. history. And he's actually won more cases against the federal government than any lawyer in history, by the way.
Wow.
He's an amazing man, and I've met him personally, and he assured me that he was going to do everything he could. He also did a formal opinion where he looked at whether these procedures were already illegal and concluded. We put a team of top Yale educated lawyers from here in Texas on this, and they concluded it's the longest opinion ever written in the state of Texas from the Attorney General's office. And they concluded that it's already illegal under federal law. And here's why. Even if you go all the way back to the colonial period, all the way back into England, all the way back to the medieval period, from the medieval Anglo law all the way to now, it has always been illegal to take away the right of procreation of a child.
Oh, wow.
For most of that time, it was illegal to even take away your own self-procreation. You could not castrate yourself, for example. But for children, it's a fundamental liberty interest. And in the U.S. period of law, where, after the Civil War, we developed this, the American body of law starts to diverge from English common law a little bit. There are 4 key decisions where they ruled that procreation is a fundamental liberty interest, and the state can never take it from a child. There are no circumstances in which the state can do that. And there's not many things you find in the law where, like, the Supreme Court says there are no circumstances. They never say stuff like that. Okay.
Right.
So it's already, and then under Texas law, we trace our law back through the Spanish juridical system. So you go back through our law, through English common law. Once we joined the Union, prior to joining the Union, we were under Mexican law, which was the Spanish system. All of those systems also take the same thing. You cannot remove the right of procreation from children. So there's literally no ambiguity in the law. Why these doctors have been allowed to do this, I'll never know. One of the arguments that I made in California is that California has a law against female genital mutilation.
Oh, that's interesting.
Muslims, were, mutilating girls by removing their clitorises. It's a Muslim practice in many parts of the world. Ayaan Hirsi Ali had it done to her when she was a child. But it's illegal in Texas. It's illegal in California. The feminists said, you can't do that here, right? So I claimed that doing these procedures is already against California law. You can't mutilate a child. It's already illegal for girls. You can't do it under their female genital mutilation standards. And because California requires equal treatment of men and women, boys and girls, they can't do it to boys either.
That's brilliant.
Right? Yeah. So but we all recognize that this was wrong and it should be illegal. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had, laws banning genital mutilation, right? But suddenly we get this transgender stuff that's being funded by Paul Singer and the DeVos family, these big donors to the Republican Party. And suddenly we find in 2 years, $100 million gender clinics are in all 50 states. It's suddenly okay to mutilate children. So it's been a top-down movement from the very beginning. It had nothing to do with psychology or psychological science.
Right.
It was a movement by big, rich donors that I believe want to destroy middle-class families in America in order to destroy their political power.
And these hospitals are making millions of dollars. And so I'm so grateful for your fight, because I don't know how you've made it this long, but I believe that you are a pioneer and you're leading the way, where maybe some fathers and moms, they don't know how to do what you're doing, or they don't have the funds, or they don't have the spiritual and emotional stamina. So I just want to say thank you from, one parent to another. Thank you for standing and fighting. And I'm going to be praying about this, and
thank you.
Praying that President-elect Trump will get right on this immediately. Real quick, how can folks find you and follow you, Jeff? I just was curious. I'd love for folks to be able to support.
Right. So the easiest place to go would just be savejames.org, savejames.org, and there's links there. And then you can always find me on Twitter. I'm at Jeff Younger Show. I don't actually have a show, but my life had become so public, I felt like I was in the Truman Show. So it was kind of a joke.
That's funny. Yeah, it really is kind of a show. So, well, I thank you so much. I'm proud of you. I know that you didn't need to hear that from me, but I really believe that that God has used you and called you for such a time as this, like Esther 4:14 talks about. And thank you for not giving up, because you're not just fighting for James, but you're fighting for all children in America. I know you do
Yes.
that. And I just
Yes.
want to say a big thank you. And it's a pleasure and an honor to have you here today.
Thank you very much.
And let's support Jeff. Let's follow him on Twitter at Jeff Younger Show. And then we can go to his website, check that out, and read the story, the tragic story about his son James at savejames.com. At the very least, we can pray for him, put him on your prayer list and pray for him. But let's support him. I mean, this is amazing work he's done. He's not quit. And he really is fighting not just for James, but for all of our children, all children and grandchildren across America. So let's pray for him. And then share this episode. You know, if you're not directly touched by the social contagion of transgenderism, I'm sure you know somebody, you know, who is dealing with this. So share this show to offer encouragement as well. Thank you all so much for listening today, and God bless.